There are several instances in the Bible where the word nations is used to refer to the children of Israel. This can sometimes lead to confusion, as the term nations is often associated with non-Israelite groups. Here are some examples. As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. In this passage, God promises Abraham that he will be the father of many nations. The Hebrew word used here is goyim, which is the plural form of goy. While this might appear to refer to non-Israelite nations, the promise is specifically about Abraham's descendants, the children of Israel. In verse 4, God declares that his covenant is with Abraham and that he will be the father of many nations. The Hebrew phrase used here is av hamon goyim, which literally means father of a multitude of nations. The word goyim is the plural form of goy, which is often translated as nation or Gentile in other contexts. However, in the context of God's covenant with Abraham, the promise of being a father of many nations is primarily understood as referring to the various tribes and nations that would descend from Abraham, particularly through his son Isaac and grandson Jacob, who was later renamed Israel. While this promise could include non-Israelite nations, its primary focus is on the descendants of Abraham who would become the children of Israel. However, in the context of God's covenant with Abraham, the promise of being a father of many nations is primarily understood as referring to the various tribes and nations that would descend from Abraham, particularly through his son Isaac and grandson Jacob, who was later renamed Israel. While this promise could include non-Israelite nations, its primary focus is on the descendants of Abraham, who would become the children of Israel. In verse 5, God changes Abram's name to Abraham, which is significant in light of the covenant promise. The name Abram means exalted father, while Abraham means father of a multitude. This name change symbolizes the fulfillment of God's promise to make Abraham the father of many nations, emphasizing his role as the progenitor of the people of Israel. The concept of Abraham being a father of many nations is further developed throughout the biblical narrative, as the children of Israel grow and divide into various tribes and kingdoms. The promise finds its ultimate fulfillment through Abraham's descendant, the Messiah from the tribe of Judah, who brings salvation and blessing to people from all scattered lost tribes who put their faith in him. These verses underscore the special relationship between God and Abraham's descendants, the children of Israel. The promise of being a father of many nations is seen as primarily referring to the Israelite people, rather than to all nations in a universal sense. This understanding emphasizes the unique role and identity of Israel in God's plan, as well as the importance of the covenant promises made to Abraham and his descendants. In summary, Genesis 17:4-5 highlights God's covenant with Abraham, promising him that he will be the father of many nations, primarily through his Israelite descendants. The name change from Abram to Abraham signifies the fulfillment of this promise and emphasizes Abraham's role as the progenitor of the people of Israel. These verses are foundational to the exclusives doctrine, which emphasizes the special relationship between God and the children of Israel and the specificity of his covenant promises to them. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Here, Jacob, Israel, blesses his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh. He states that Ephraim's descendants will become a multitude of nations. Again, the Hebrew word used is goyim, but it refers to the future tribes of Israel that would descend from Ephraim. In this passage, Jacob blesses Ephraim, the younger grandson, with his right hand, signifying a greater blessing. When Joseph tries to correct his father, Jacob refuses, stating that he knows what he is doing. Jacob acknowledges that Manasseh, the older grandson, will also become a great people. But he prophesies that Ephraim will be greater, and that his descendants will become a multitude of nations. The Hebrew phrase used for a multitude of nations is melo hagoyim, which literally means fullness of the nations. The word goyim is the plural form of goy, which is often translated as nation or Gentile in other contexts. In this verse, Jacob is prophesying that Ephraim's descendants will become a large group of nations or peoples. It is essential to understand that this prophecy is not about Ephraim's descendants becoming Gentile nations in the sense of non-Israelite peoples. Instead, it is a prophecy about the future proliferation and influence of Ephraim's descendants within the context of the Israelite nation. In other words, Jacob is foretelling that Ephraim's lineage will become a significant and numerous part of the Israelite people, perhaps even overshadowing the other tribes in terms of population and power. This prophecy is significant in the context of the exclusives doctrine because it emphasizes the importance of the specific lineages within the Israelite nation. The blessings and prophecies given to each tribe are seen as having a direct impact on the future of the Israelite people as a whole. The idea that Ephraim's descendants would become a multitude of nations underscores the concept that the Israelite nation would grow and diversify while still maintaining its unique identity as the chosen people of God. Furthermore, this passage demonstrates the importance of patriarchal blessings in the biblical narrative. Jacob's choice to bless Ephraim over Manasseh, despite Joseph's objections, shows that these blessings were not merely symbolic, but were believed to have real spiritual and tangible consequences for the future of the tribes and the nation of Israel as a whole. In summary, Genesis 48:19 records Jacob's prophecy that Ephraim's descendants would become a multitude of nations, emphasizing the future growth and influence of Ephraim's lineage within the context of the Israelite nation. This prophecy is significant in the context of the exclusives doctrine, as it highlights the importance of specific lineages within the Israelite people and the role of patriarchal blessings in shaping the future of the nation. The verse underscores the idea that the Israelite nation would grow and diversify while maintaining its unique identity as the chosen people of God. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. In this verse, the word nations, Hebrew, goyim, is used in parallel with the people, referring to the children of Israel. The verse suggests that God divided the world's nations according to the number of the children of Israel, emphasizing their central role in his plan. Deuteronomy 32:8 states, "When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel." This verse is part of the Song of Moses, which recounts God's dealings with Israel and his plan for the nations. In this verse, Moses declares that when God divided the nations and separated the descendants of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. The Hebrew phrase used for the nations is goyim, which is the plural form of goy, often translated as nation or Gentile in other contexts. The verse suggests that God's division of the nations and their territories was not random, but was based on the number of the children of Israel. This concept is significant in the context of the exclusives doctrine, as it emphasizes the central role of Israel in God's plan for the world. One interpretation of this verse is that God allocated the territories of the various nations with the intention of providing a specific inheritance for the children of Israel. In other words, God's division of the world was done with Israel in mind, ensuring that they would have a land of their own and a unique place among the nations. Another interpretation suggests that the number of the children of Israel serves as a template or model for the division of the nations. This understanding implies that Israel's role is not merely to receive an inheritance, but to serve as a paradigm for how God deals with the nations as a whole. In either case, the verse emphasizes the special status of Israel in God's plan, and the idea that the fate of the nations is somehow tied to the existence and role of the children of Israel. This concept is central to the exclusives doctrine, which sees Israel as the primary focus of God's redemptive work in the world. Furthermore, the verse implies a sense of divine order and purpose in the arrangement of the nations. It suggests that God is sovereign over the boundaries and territories of the peoples, and that his division of the world is not arbitrary, but is based on his wisdom and plan. In the broader context of Deuteronomy 32, this verse is part of a larger narrative that emphasizes God's faithfulness to Israel, despite their disobedience and rebellion. The Song of Moses serves as a reminder of God's covenant relationship with Israel and his ultimate purpose to bless the world through them. In summary, Deuteronomy 32:8 highlights the central role of Israel in God's plan for the nations, suggesting that the division of the world's territories was done according to the number of the children of Israel. This verse is significant in the context of the exclusives doctrine, as it emphasizes the special status of Israel and the idea that the fate of the nations is tied to their existence and role. The verse also implies a sense of divine order and purpose in the arrangement of the nations, underscoring God's sovereignty and wisdom in his dealings with the world. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations. In this prophecy, Isaiah refers to the region of Galilee as Galilee of the nations, Hebrew, goyim. This might seem to imply that Galilee was populated by non-Israelites. However, the term nations here likely refers to the diverse Israelite tribes living in the region, as Galilee was part of the northern kingdom of Israel. In this verse, Isaiah refers to a past time when the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali, located in northern Israel, were afflicted or oppressed. This affliction likely refers to the Assyrian invasion and conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel, which included these territories. The phrase, "by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan," describes the region around the Sea of Galilee, which was also part of this northern area. Significantly, Isaiah mentions Galilee of the nations, Hebrew, Galil HaGoyim. The word goyim is the plural form of goy, which is often translated as nation or Gentile in other contexts. The use of this phrase has led some to interpret the verse as suggesting that Galilee was inhabited by non-Israelite peoples or Gentiles. However, in the context of the exclusives doctrine, the phrase Galilee of the nations is understood differently. From this perspective, the term nations is seen as referring to the diverse Israelite tribes and peoples living in the region, rather than to non-Israelite Gentiles. The northern tribes of Israel, including Zebulun and Naphtali, had a history of being influenced by the surrounding pagan cultures and had faced judgment and oppression as a result. The verse goes on to say that the dimness or darkness of this past affliction will not be like the future vexation or trouble that the region will face. This future trouble likely refers to the Babylonian exile, which would affect the entire nation of Israel, including the northern territories. In the broader context of Isaiah's prophecy, this verse sets the stage for the coming of the Messiah, who is described in the following verses as a great light that will shine upon those who have been in darkness, Isaiah 9:2. The Messiah's coming is portrayed as bringing hope and deliverance to the afflicted regions of Israel, including Galilee. From the perspective of the exclusives doctrine, this passage emphasizes God's covenant relationship with Israel and his plan to redeem and restore them through the coming of the Messiah. The reference to Galilee of the nations is seen as highlighting the diverse Israelite tribes within the region rather than suggesting a Gentile presence. The prophecy underscores the idea that God's redemptive work is focused on Israel and that the Messiah's coming will bring hope and deliverance to the entire nation. In summary, Isaiah 9:1 describes the past affliction of the northern territories of Israel, including Zebulun, Naphtali, and the region of Galilee. The phrase Galilee of the nations is understood in the context of the exclusives doctrine as referring to the diverse Israelite tribes within the area rather than to non-Israelite Gentiles. The verse sets the stage for the coming of the Messiah, who will bring hope and deliverance to the afflicted regions of Israel. This passage emphasizes God's covenant relationship with Israel and his plan to redeem and restore them through the Messiah. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send thee to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that hath rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even unto this very day. In this verse, God sends Ezekiel to the children of Israel, whom he describes as a rebellious nation, Hebrew, goy. This shows that the term nation can be used to refer specifically to the Israelites, even in a singular form. These examples demonstrate that the words nations and nation in the Bible can refer to both Israelite and non-Israelite groups, depending on the context. It is important to consider the original Hebrew words and their usage within the specific passage to accurately understand the intended meaning. In this verse, God addresses Ezekiel as Son of Man, a title that emphasizes his humanity and his role as a prophet. God then tells Ezekiel that he is sending him to the children of Israel, whom he describes as a rebellious nation that has transgressed against him. The Hebrew word used for nation in this verse is goy, which is singular. This usage demonstrates that the term goy can refer specifically to the nation of Israel and not just to non-Israelite nations or Gentiles. By using this term, God is emphasizing the unique identity of Israel as a distinct nation, set apart from other peoples. However, God also describes Israel as a rebellious nation, highlighting their disobedience and unfaithfulness to Him. The verse states that both the current generation and their fathers have transgressed against God, indicating a pattern of ongoing rebellion and sin. This description of Israel as a rebellious nation is significant in the context of the exclusives doctrine, as it underscores the idea that being part of the chosen people does not guarantee faithfulness or obedience to God. The verse suggests that even Israel, who has a special covenant relationship with God, can fall into sin and rebellion. At the same time, the fact that God is sending Ezekiel to speak to the children of Israel demonstrates his ongoing commitment to his people despite their disobedience. God's decision to send a prophet to warn and admonish Israel is an act of mercy and love, showing that he desires their repentance and restoration. In the broader context of Ezekiel's prophecy, this verse sets the stage for the prophet's message to Israel, which includes both warnings of judgment and promises of future restoration and blessing. Throughout the book, Ezekiel emphasizes the importance of individual and corporate repentance, as well as the need for Israel to turn back to God and obey His commandments. From the perspective of the exclusives doctrine, this passage highlights the unique status of Israel as God's chosen nation, while also acknowledging their potential for sin and rebellion. It emphasizes the importance of faithfulness and obedience to God, even for those who are part of the covenant people. At the same time, the verse demonstrates God's ongoing love and concern for Israel, as He sends a prophet to call them back to Himself. In summary, Ezekiel 2:3 describes Israel as a rebellious nation that has transgressed against God, using the singular term goy to refer specifically to the Israelite people. This verse highlights the potential for disobedience and sin, even among God's chosen people, while also demonstrating God's mercy and love in sending a prophet to call Israel back to Himself. The passage emphasizes the importance of repentance, obedience, and faithfulness to God, themes that are central to the message of Ezekiel and the broader context of the exclusives doctrine.